Lecture 9. So the title of this lecture is Islam at the Crossroads, and it doesn't attempt to answer questions so much as it does sort of try to frame what the questions are. I mean, Islam is a faith which is in sort of a transitional period, trying to find out in many ways who it is now and who it's going to be in the next century. I have condensed this down fairly compactly, which you'll be hard pressed to determine after I find out that this is going to end up being a 10-minute long discussion. But basically, it boils down to two lists. The first is sort of attempts to break down Muslim observance as it stands today, and the author does this as four groups. So first of all, is and simplest, I think, to understand for Westerners is the secularist. That, believe it or not, there are Muslims who believe that essentially that there should be a separation between church and state. So the secularists would believe, much as the Americans purport to, that Islam belongs in the mosque and nowhere else. It is a personal relationship and not for you to meddle with. Contrastingly, we have conservatives who tend to, as you might guess by the name, tend to prefer a very conservative, rigorous approach. The Islamic law, as passed down, God hasn't changed his mind just because a few centuries passed. This is nothing in the eyes of God. So the rules that were in place 500 years ago are just as good now. So we should keep to them and keep with tradition. These groups tend to be led primarily by the religious clerics in the area. So it's a very theocratic approach to Islam. The third is the mainstream or fundamentalists. This group believes that everything that the Quran is great. We're gonna stay with the basic premises that the Quran teaches us. But it's been a few centuries, guys. We can kind of mold this to fit the current day, as opposed to being stuck in a completely, we must stay to the exact word of law as written 1,000 years ago. We can change with the world to a certain extent. Fourth are the reformers. These are very liberal Muslims that borrow heavily from Western thought. They're trying to be the integration of classic Muslim values, which are pretty solid, with new Western realities of this is what the world has changed to. So they draw a distinct line between those bits of Islamic law that are prescribed specifically by God, and those which are essentially just interpretations of it from after the death of the Prophet. Really, they're only arguing about a few pretty key things, but really I think a lot of it boils down to one key fact. I'm just kind of listing a few of them here. First of all, what is the role of women? Anybody who watches the news knows that if you're a woman in a Muslim country, depending on where you live, you can either be extremely well placed. You can be a complete equal. You can be the Prime Minister of Pakistan, or you can not be allowed to drive. Just depending on which who happens to be ruling where you're living. So the role of women is one thing that I think the Westerners pay the most attention to, and it's also one of the most varied. You've got the full spectrum of treatment there. What is the role of the democratic process in governing? Again, the governments range from democratic to completely theocratic. That's called theocratic dictatorships. The people don't get a say in anything. It's all the clerics because they know best. They can best interpret the word of the Quran, or, as I said, on the other end of the spectrum, completely democratic. So a lot of variability here. What is the separation, if any, between the role of church in society and that of the government? Again, as I said, you run the gamut here from no separation. They are one and the same, and to strict separationism. Fourth, the role of non-Muslims or dhimmi. At no point does the lecturer say that the dhimmi are considered to be slaughtered on the street, contrary to what many Westerners might think. But there is a bit of variation from you're a full and equal citizen with everyone else to you're kind of second class. So you're welcome to stay, but you're going to have to pay a little tax and go back to business. So fifth, and one thing that we pay a lot of attention to in the West is the hudud. These are Quranically prescribed laws for a specific crimes. So if a woman commits adultery, she gets stoned to death. If someone's caught stealing, they get their hand cut off. This is the classic thing you hear about from the Arabian, the 1001 Arabian Nights. The beliefs are somewhat variable whether these things still have a place in modern society, and so but in the end I think it all boils down to one simple question, and that is the law of God, Allah, mutable or not? Should it change with the times, or was something that was good for us 1,000 years ago, is it still good today? And that does seem to be the fundamental question that all these boil down to. If it was good enough then, is it good enough now? So one thing the lecturer says, which I think is pretty fundamental, is that while to us Westerners, Islam seems like a very monolithic thing. It's these are here's what they believe, and they're all marching along to the same beat. But really, they're just as varied as their belief systems are just as varied, if not more so, than what we have in the West as far as Christian faith. There's so much variation that it would be impossible not to find someone to agree with on some level. So I wish we'd all just stop fighting, but that's political commentary on my part. So anyway, that's what level 9. That's what lecture 9 is all about. If you have more interest in it, just go and watch it for yourself, and you can fill in all the little bits that I left out. But until next time, happy reading, watching, whatever.